Good morning, good afternoon, good evening in every part of the world that is looking this conference. My name is Stefanos Fotiou. I'm the Director of Environment and Development Division in the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. And today, in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I will try to establish a basis on how we can connect regenerative agriculture and saving the soil, which is the theme of this conference, with the concept of circular economy. I have prepared a small presentation to do this, so let me start by sharing my screen. And I would like to start by trying to answer the question, first of all, why I decided to be in this very interesting conference. I decided because I think we have been in a situation that our unsustainable development paradigm has compromised the ability of the natural systems of Earth to provide life-supporting functions. And actually, this compromise has been resulted on the natural system being degraded in such a way that they are creating planetary changes. And if these planetary changes will be intensified, could become irreversible, and really they could compromise life on Earth. And I do know that I'm talking to a group of experts on agriculture and on natural systems, but I want to show the way that I perceive the relation between the different natural systems. I have this graph I have taken here from the University of California. And what I think is something that is connecting what we are talking today in the conference, which is regenerative agriculture, with the circular economy, and with the degradation that has happened to our ecosystem, is these elemental cycles. And the way that the natural systems of the Earth, the atmosphere, the biosphere, the hydrosphere, and the geosphere are connected with changes in their system that are anthropogenic changes. So I think you are all familiar with how we have altered our environment, but let me focus on two small things, two small slides for two big things. So how this impact has been created. The impact in agriculture has been, unfortunately, science-driven. And we have a process which I think is very well known to most of agricultural engineers, the Haber-Bosch process, which was developed by industrial chemist Fritz Haber and scaled up by Carl Bosch. And this is an artificial nitrogen fixation process that creates ammonia. And this process has been increasingly used in the 20th century to meet the demand for nitrates and ammonia for use as fertilizers and industrial livestock. At the same time, we had this big green revolution that started with Norman Borlaug in the 40s, with some research he started in Mexico and developed wheat varieties that adapted to growing conditions with stable disease resistance and produced high yields. So these new varieties and the improved management practices, they tripled Mexico's wheat production and they started to transform the agricultural productivity in Asia, in Latin America, and in other parts of the world. And between 1960 and 2000, the yields for all developing countries rose 200% for wheat, more than 100% for rice, 160% almost for maize, 80% for potatoes, 36% for cassava. So this production of cereal crops tripled during the period with only a 30% increase in the land area cultivated. So we did have indeed a very big increase on the food grain production. And that meant that we were able to produce food to feed a much increasing population. But at the same time, we had a very big environmental footprint, bigger water use, soil degradation, chemical runoff, large methane emissions, and a loss of agrobiodiversity. So if we want to see the balance of what was the impact of science in the agricultural productivity, we will see that we lost when it came to sustainability. So we gain on the part of sustainability that talks about economic growth, but we lost a lot when it comes to the environmental footprint. And two of the obvious changes we have done, one is on biodiversity. So we see how extinction is increasing, how we lose species, 1 out of 4 species are at a risk of extinction. And an answer to many evolutionary biologists sometimes that they say, you know, extinctions are there to happen, is that if you look at the curves of extinction in human population, we'll see that one is following the other. And it's actually the extinction of species that is following the human population. And of course, the second largest probably impact, the impact on climate change. And I want to show here 2 graphs. The one is how the disasters are increasing year by year. And you see here the number of what is called billion-dollar disaster events. So this is only events that their cost is more than $1 billion. And you see how it is increasing with the years, with all these red colors. On the other side, look how these disasters are actually affecting disproportionately the poor and the lower income countries. So the loss on lives, but extremely importantly, the loss on GDP is much bigger from the disasters to the developing and the low income countries. So we are in a position that we need to feed a growing population without environmental degradation. We need to achieve what we call decouple. We need to decouple the increase of agricultural productivity and agricultural production that we need in order to feed the population that will surpass the 9 billion, and at the same time, make sure that we contribute to keeping our climate under control and not losing biodiversity. So one of the ways that, at least in the United Nations, we believe that it could be a very good method, a very good process to address this, is the approach and the concept of circular economy. So we want to reverse and prevent further environmental degradation, and we do believe that circular economy can do this. And normally when we think about circular economy, most of the people will think about recycling plastics or phones, but circular economy is something much more than recycling some of the products we use. The general principles of circular economy stay, of course, the same when it comes to every product. And you can see on the left side of the slide, whereas the linear economy is a deliberately wasteful flow, where we take, we make, we dispose, while a circular economy cuts out waste by designing out waste, by keeping products and materials in use, and by regenerating natural system. Also on the right side here, you see the classic, what we call butterfly diagram. The spine of the butterfly is the supply chain, starting with your choices of materials at the top, renewables that include biomass or definitive materials. And these are processed into parts, then products then sent to a service provider like a retailer or a restaurant, and people can either consume the product or they can use it. So in a circular economy system, we first apply the principles of the left side, then we manage the sources using circular strategies. And we have different loops, which I will not go into details because you can find all the references. But the important is that we need to understand that in a circular economy, waste is a resource. And if we look at the production of waste, actually we're looking at the production of a resource. Let me finish the slide on circular economy and say that it's by the law of physics and thermodynamics that perfect circularity can never be achieved. Because if we could achieve perfect circularity, we would have broken the first and the second law of thermodynamics. But what we can achieve is to reduce the part of the waste that it disposed without any treatment. So what are some circular economy approaches for the agri-food sector? I think there are 3 big approaches of circularity for the agri-food sector. One is to design out the negative impacts of agricultural activity that they cause damage to human health and natural system. And this is resource-intensive fertilizers, pesticides, and pumping of water from long distances. So it's more or less the production part of agriculture. The second is the effective use of biomaterials by encouraging different uses for them as they cycle between the economy and natural system. And the third circular area for our agri-food sector is the regeneration of the natural systems by returning valuable nutrients to the soil. And I think it's somewhere between this second and third part of the circularity where regenerative agriculture comes in. So we can recycle food losses, we can reduce food losses and waste. We can halve the lost waste by 2050. We could close the gap of the food needed in 2050 and fully available in 2010 by more than 20%, reduce greenhouse emissions and go to the 1 gigaton CO2 per year by 2050, and avoid converting natural ecosystems to agricultural land sites. Also, if we apply this circular economy, we can valorization agri-food waste through composting, reducing waste, and also reducing the carbon footprint. We could bring the value chain for food distribution and consumption, including everything from packaging to exports, and reduce the carbon footprint, pollution, and welfare of live animals, reducing also the risk of zoonosis, which is what it has brought the world to a standstill because of the COVID-19 pandemic. So don't forget that what we are facing today, it's nothing more than a manifestation of the unsustainable way we are managing our resources and the unsustainable way we are managing our food production system, because the COVID-19 pandemic, it's caused by a disease that it's a zoonosis. So it's a disease that passed from the natural population, from the wildlife population to the human population. So how regenerative agriculture it fits into this? So the regenerative agriculture focuses on soil health, water management, and ecosystems. And you are the experts on this, so I'm not going to tell you how regenerative agriculture could fill all the boxes of the circular economy. But it's quite important to see what are the circular economy policy instruments. And I want to emphasize in the fact that we do need a very large and very diverse portfolio of policy instruments to achieve circularity in agriculture. So we need, from the one side, to stimulate design for the circular economy. So we need to make the basis of agricultural production to change the way that they are designed and implemented. So we need a number of information-based instruments like certification, labeling and tracking, digital product passports, you know, the one that it says, know your chicken, know your milk, know your cow. And all of this, they could really help on having more information on where our food is coming from and what is the impact. We need also to have instruments that they will manage resources to preserve value. And here, the financial instruments are extremely important. And one of the most important instruments is the full cost pricing, especially when it comes to resources like water. And I want to emphasize on this because there are studies saying that there are some agricultural commodities that they're extremely cheap and some others that they might be extremely expensive for the poor. So we know that the most of the products and services we are producing and using, they do not incorporate the environmental externalities. So we need to see the full cost pricing of agricultural products, because this could change the way that policies for agricultural products, and not only for products, but policies for land use management are happening. We need also instruments like cap and trade, and I don't want to put outside of the picture the extremely important extended producer responsibility. So when a producer is creating goods and services that they are not sustainable, it needs to have responsibility to put them back in the circularity chain. Also, to manage resources, we need regulatory instruments like SET and some sectoral standards. But here's something we need to take care about, is that we can't really address and, if you want, handle the big agricultural corporations with the small producers, because with the same way, because the small producers do not have the access that big corporations, for example, have on resources to make things happen better. Also, we need instruments that they will make the economics work. So instruments like taxes, subsidies, or sometimes counter subsidies, and trained policies that they will encourage circularity in the agricultural production. We need to invest in innovation, infrastructure, and skills, and this will be done through research and development, interdisciplinary research, funding, and of course, education. And last but not least, we need to collaborate for system change. So we need to see the ways of governance, integrate into APEX policy things like environmental protection, biodiversity conservation, and climate action. Establish multi-stakeholder and cross-value chain working mechanisms, and set up measurement systems and promote also the exchange of data and information sharing. And if we do this, we will see a very big area of benefits, which again, you know much better as you are the experts, from improved soils, increased biodiversity, carbon sequestration, improved ecosystem services, and at the end, what we are all looking on, improved well-being and livelihood. So I would like to close with something that is very basic. And it's this diagram of sustainability that at least myself, when I was starting back to the 80s, I had as my guidance. That sustainability is where the cycle of environmental protection, economic development, and social progress is coming together. And I want to send a message here, and especially if we have students that they are listening, that this is completely wrong. I know that this was an extremely good approximation to put on a diagram what sustainable development is, but it's extremely wrong. And it's wrong for three issues. One is because it assumes that all these systems, the environmental system, the economic system, and the social systems are independent, and they don't actually interact with each other. The second is because it shows the system, these three systems having the same gravity and importance, which again is not correct. And the third, and I would say most important, is because it diminishes sustainability in a very small triangle in the center of these three cycles, and it creates an impression that sustainability is something not easy to be achieved, something small and very difficult. So I think that we need a step going beyond this graph and going in somewhere that it will represent what really is happening in real life. And what's happening in real life is that we have an environment system, we have our natural environment that it provides the support that it has allowed a society to be established, and within this society, an economy to be established. And we need to see these systems one within the other, and actually with the importance that one system has for the other. So environment is the basis of everything. The natural resources, the ecosystems, the life supporting systems they provide is the basis for our society and our economy. And we need to see issues like how we manage climate, how we manage biodiversity, waste and emissions within this scheme. So let me finish by saying that I think we have two big emergencies today that we need to address: the climate and the biodiversity emergency. And to do this, I think we need to reestablish the relation between nature and human activity, and also redesign our production and consumption systems, including and especially the financial systems, which they are supporting all these factors. I wish you all the best for the continuation of your conference. And if you have any questions, please put them in the text, and I will be looking forward to interact and answer these questions. I thank you very much for your attention.